Mr. Gotfried, would you like to share your time with the minister?
Please, Mr. Chairman.
All right, please proceed.
Great. Thank you to the minister and his staff for being here to answer our difficult questions today. I'd like to start out, don't get too comfortable, I'll give you some kudos first. I wanted to give you thanks for accepting some amendments to some previous legislation in the last session. And also, as I've said to you before, I appreciate the hard work you're doing with export development. And as I said before, I'll follow you for not foregoing and investing well and investing hard for Albertans' benefit. I have a few concerns here. I've heard a lot of requests from the official opposition about measuring, and as we all know, if you can't measure, you can't manage, and that does concern me. And of course, I think there are some policy issues which I think make your job very difficult. So I'll move straight into some questions here. On Key Strategy 1.1 in your business plan, it speaks about building competitiveness for Alberta and Alberta companies. Given that Alberta has no control over world commodity prices, making us essentially a price taker, particularly with commodities that we are major exporters of, how is introducing the carbon tax, which adds additional costs across multiple sectors, making Alberta more competitive on the world stage?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for your comments, and again, happy to work with all parties in the House to strengthen our legislation. So appreciate the amendments you brought forward last fall. What I can tell you is that talking to industry, we've learned that putting an economy-wide price on carbon is one way to help incentivize or look at ways for companies to reduce their greenhouse gases, to reduce their footprint. And that's why, again, we're looking at, partnering innovation or partnering with companies on innovation to help them do that, which will make them reduce their costs and be more globally competitive. I can tell you that the Climate Leadership Plan was one of the reasons, if not the reason that stands out. The Prime Minister acknowledged that without Alberta's Climate Leadership Plan, both the Trans Mountain Pipeline and the Line 3 pipeline would not have been approved. What we also know is that the federal government will be imposing on provinces and jurisdictions that don't come up with their own climate leadership. They will impose a made in Ottawa solution on that jurisdiction. And so we decided not to wait for Ottawa to tell us what to do in Alberta, but to put a price on carbon and to take all of the dollars collected from the carbon levy and reinvest them back into the province.
Thank you, Minister. I understand some of your justification there, but we're facing a situation, obviously, particularly with our largest market and our largest competitor in the U.S., who does accept a lot of our commodities across the border, but also we compete with them internationally. And we've heard from the U.S. Thus far that they're not going to have that carbon tax. Again, referring to Strategy 1.1, you've highlighted agriculture as an industry to focus on throughout that business plan. Yet during public presentations we heard actually in this committee, during discussions around diversifying agri-food and agribusiness, we heard repeatedly that carbon tax has a serious impact on competitiveness and sustainability of many of the agricultural sector businesses that we heard from. What specific initiatives, given the fact that I will accept your justification of the carbon tax on one level, what specific initiatives is your ministry undertaking to reduce and mitigate the possible impact and damages that are being done by imposing that with respect to competitiveness against competing industries that do not have to incur that cost in a price-taking world?
Right, and so there's a number of initiatives that we're exploring as far as, again, a reallocation of the carbon levy on how, especially trade-exposed industries, how to ensure that they remain competitive within the province, but also for them to remain competitive internationally. We are looking at different opportunities, and I work very closely with the Minister of Agriculture and Forestry to explore ways that we can support and increase opportunities for value add, especially in agriculture, we know there's a growing demand, especially in our international markets. And one of the things that we've seen, not only on this trade mission, but we've also seen a significant increase in demand, especially in Asia, for our products, whether they are raw or processed. I mean, our canola sector, we sell both raw, crushed, and canola oil over to China. So through the ACCO, the Alberta Climate Change Office, pardon me, we have too many acronyms, frankly, that we're looking at ways to ensure that those industries, especially those, like I said, that are trade exposed, have support to be able to remain competitive. One of the things that we're doing is rolling out a program or programs not only that will help individual Albertans as far as residential, but looking at programs that will help our industry drive down their costs. And so again, when we look at the transition to renewables, yes, there is often an upfront cost, but the savings comes when you look at over the lifespan, your energy costs get reduced significantly.
Thank you, Minister. I understand where you're coming from with that. I guess I have two concerns. Is a little short on specifics. I'd like to see those come forward in time. The other side of it is a lot of these industries and businesses are struggling right now. A lot of what you're talking about is long-term investments in reducing their footprint and their costs and efficiency. And my concern is that some may not survive that long. So I hope that you'll be long on specifics and short on rhetoric as we move forward. Minister, your government is obviously no fan of thermal coal. However, metallurgical coal continues to have enormous economic potential for Alberta, given that Alberta is the world's third largest exporter of metallurgical coal. One of your private members passed a motion last session which could have a significant impact on metallurgical projects along the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains. Can you clarify your ministry's position on supporting and expanding Alberta's ability to mine and export metallurgical coal?
So from the get-go, when we announced the phase out of thermal coal by 2030, which again I want for the record to clarify that 12 out of the 18 facilities were scheduled through federal regulations to shut down. Another piece of information which a lot of folks don't know is that under the previous federal government, facilities were not eligible or able to convert to cogen or natural gas. We ended up working with the federal government to get them to overturn the previous regs so that facilities can continue to operate post 2030, which is significant because again, one of the things that we've committed to is working with the coal-affected communities and their workers and the towns themselves and municipalities to come up with and identify opportunities for those communities. We've also been working with the companies, some of which are exploring opportunities to convert.
Minister, I'm going to stay on the metallurgical.
So to jump back to metallurgical, we do not plan to phase out met coal. We understand that obviously you need metallurgical coal to make steel, and there is turbines, perhaps, and there is a demand for it internationally, and so we have not. We have not said that we are going to shut down these met facilities.
I hope not. Hopefully there'll be some job opportunities there. Minister, 8 metallurgical projects currently identified in Alberta have the potential to generate between $10 and $13 billion over the life of those projects in government revenue, with the potential to directly employ between 3,000 and 4,000 people. Can you highlight specific initiatives your department is undertaking to assist these projects in getting off the ground, which may actually create an opportunity for you to move some employment opportunities from thermal coal to metallurgical coal?
Yeah. So I'm just chatting with my deputy real quick here as far as, the two tax credit programs, the investor tax credit, again, depending on the size of the company, if it's 100 or fewer FTEs, then it could potentially be a part of or apply
I think
for.
these are more in terms of approvals of these projects with respect to.
Oh, I see. So what we're doing, I mean, I can't, sorry, member, sitting here, I can't comment on specific ones, but I can tell you that we do work with the Ministry of Energy very closely and looking at opportunities.
We've looked at a very detailed map of opportunities, which is got quite a number on there, and very few of them are actually active at this point in time. So I would actually appreciate some further details on what you're doing to try and accelerate those.
Sure.
Get down to some specifics. One of these projects is owned by a three-way partnership between a significant global coal investor and two massive international investment funds. Is this type of investment to move jobs and opportunity in to replace some of the other thermal coal jobs in these areas? Is this not the exact type of investment your ministry is supposed to be attracting and trying to foster to diversify our economy on the shoulders of a great resource we have, which is the metallurgical coal?
So, our department, again, works cross-government with other ministries to identify opportunities within all the different sectors. Is there potential opportunity with MET? Yes, absolutely. I can tell you that through Invest Alberta, this is a division that we stood up within my ministry, existing budget, existing department. But essentially imagine a task force that is charged with looking at and working closely with our 12 international offices to identify opportunities to work with potential companies, potential investors. And really, I can tell you, member, that one of the things companies and international investors are looking for is support to, whether it's navigate the regulation taxation system, to look at, again, how do the three orders of government all work together. And so Invest Alberta essentially has, there are 12 FTEs, if you're wondering how many, within the department. But they act as a concierge service to work with companies as we are promoting Alberta.
Thank you. I think that concierge service could be helpful, although we're hearing that there's extended delays on some of these projects, which are affecting an opportunity, I think, for you to move some of those FTEs from the thermal coal business into new opportunities. And it concerns me that we aren't taking advantage of those. And we may lose not only these current investments that are waiting, but future ones that'll hear that this is not a fast and friendly way for them to navigate the regulatory environment. So I hope that you will do that through your concierge service. Moving back to thermal coal, you have budget targets out to 2019-20. How many dollars between now and then will be allocated to workers who will soon be out of jobs? And how is your government going to change direction with respect to employment opportunities in those jurisdictions most effectively? You have mentioned already that through the conversion from coal to natural gas, some jobs will be taken, but that doesn't take care of the jobs actually in the mines, which will no longer be required. So I'm interested in what you're doing with those communities at this point in time.
Sure, great question. So there's a couple of different things. Number one, the first thing that we did on that front, we hired the best in the business, Terry Boston, to work with the companies to help facilitate, agreements. So number one, we want to ensure that for the existing coal-fired electricity facilities, that there is an order as far as how long they are generating and operating for, that we're not going to have these companies suddenly pull off the grid and see power spikes. We made a commitment to working with the communities, and again, through Terry Boston, with the companies, to ensure that they're honoring the contracts that they have with the workers, whether we're talking about pensions or payouts, that they are not just going to abandon the communities. What we've done is, and what we are in the process of doing, is through our coal panel. It's a three-member expert coal panel that is going to the coal communities, engaging with workers, engaging with municipal leaders, community leaders, to look at what are the opportunities. And so where I'm going with this, and I've been to most of the coal-affected communities to discuss economic development opportunities. And one of the things that I've done is encouraged these communities to look at the CARES program as a one of the places to start as far as let's explore what are some of the other economic development opportunities. So I appreciate, the transition is one, and I recognize, and we recognize that, when you convert from coal to gas, it takes about a third of the labor that you need for coal. And so this isn't a one-for-one job solution. But I can tell you that there's a number of economic development opportunities that have been identified, which for me is very, very exciting, where there will be an opportunity to do a little bit of either retraining or for reprofiling for workers, because we want to ensure that the communities like Hannah continue to remain vibrant communities and recognize there's a role for us to play.
Thank you, Minister. I think you have your work cut out for you there. I do hope that you have a robust strategy. It is not the responsibility that these companies that are converting to natural gas will have jobs, different jobs. They're not the ones shutting down the coal mines. I hope that you'll take the responsibility there. I also have concerns with respect to other secondary impacts, real estate values and things like that, the investment in those communities and other small businesses. So I do hope that you'll be taking that into consideration. These are people's lives, their homes, and their investments in their future. And these are serious things I think that we need to be on top of, and I hope you and your ministry will do so. Minister, again referring to some Statistics Canada data, March 2017 to March 2016, the only industries which experienced growth in terms of employment were government jobs, accommodation and food services, and agriculture. Tourism is Minister Miranda's responsibility, agriculture is Minister Carlier's responsibility. So why is it that every industry you're supposed to support and assist experienced a drop in employment over the last 12 months? We've seen 20,000 net new jobs. And I'd like to actually understand how you've leveraged those in areas other than those that are very obvious in tourism and agriculture, how you've influenced them.
So I'll start off by saying that, again, economic development and trade works very closely with other ministries. And so we are the one ministry that really is economy-wide as far as all sectors. But I can tell you that in March, we know that our employment grew by a net new full-time jobs, 20,000. But employment in the last 7 out of 8 months have gained about 39,000 jobs since the low in July of 2016. We know that, again, a lot of these jobs are full-time positions. I can tell you that for the private sector added 8,200 jobs in the month of March.
And can you tell me how many of those are self-employed, classified as self-employed?
Do we have that stat off the top? I can look to see if I can get you that answer as far as how many of...
I'd be interested in that, because sometimes, sadly, self-employed means semi-employed, as people are struggling to with their own businesses to try and make ends meet. So I would be interested in that statistic and how that might impact the opportunities that are actually created.
Sure, and I'm happy to, but again, keep in mind that the 20,000 net new are full-time jobs that were created last month.
Could be also classified as self-employed. They might be working full-time, but only getting a part-time salary or part-time remuneration out of that. Anyway, we'll leave that one for a statistical follow-up if possible.
Sure, yep.
Again, referring to Statistics Canada data, when comparing January 2017 to January 2016, the unemployment rate is up and the labor force petition rate remains stagnant despite an increase in population. What specific changes in policy or direction have you implemented to reverse these troubling trends? Again, unemployment rate is up, labor force participation rate is stagnant.
So there's a couple of things. Number one, this is exactly why, again, we introduced the Alberta Jobs Plan. So we've got a number of initiatives that we are implementing that will help create the right conditions, help support the private sector. Again, you've heard me say this before, the government is not the job creator, it's the private sector that creates the jobs. We work with them to create those jobs. Part of the reason and the challenge with the unemployment numbers. Number one, we know that this 2-year recession has had a significant impact on all sectors and all corners of the province. We also know that places like Edmonton were a little more sheltered in the first half of the downturn. Part of the reason is because of the number of projects that were in full swing as far as construction. And so some of those there was a little bit of a lag or a delay in again seeing the full impact of the sustained price of the drop, or the sustained drop in the price of oil. But one of the other things that's interesting, member, is that the number of Albertans that have stayed in the province that are continuing to look for jobs is fairly high. And so there's also a number of people moving into Alberta. Part of the reason, frankly, is again, you've got places like the Conference Board of Canada, you have different banks all forecasting Alberta is set to grow this year. Conservative numbers 2.4, other numbers 2.8. We've landed in the middle. But we're also poised to grow more than any other province.
Hesitate. We will now proceed to the PC caucus. Would you like to continue going back and forth?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. Minister, I'm just going to get some conversations with my colleague from Calgary Foothills with regard to the coal markets and the early shutdown of coal. Sorry, am I going to get some extra time here?
No, I'm still listening.
Right, okay. You're hiding behind your binder there. So
I'm trying to hand it off.
Early shutdown of coal. And I just wanted to we'd spoken a bit earlier about diversification and some retraining in some of the areas like Hanahan, Forestburg, Grand Cache, Edson, Crow's Nest Pass. Can you tell me how much money specifically has been allocated for some of the retraining and diversification in those communities to try and support them in the future? So
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the retraining dollars is actually coming out of the Ministry of Labour, not out of Economic Development and Trade. But what we've done, we haven't put either a minimum or a maximum amount yet on let's say financial support to help the communities. What we're doing is trying to identify what are the opportunities. So not wanting to box ourselves in with a dollar amount, but looking at what we can do. Well, thank you.
I think that, Minister, you've spoken quite a bit about your CARES program, which I think is a very good program, and having been in the economic development field myself and understanding some of the great people and work done through the economic developers of Alberta, that could be a very good tool to use. Is there any of the CARES money that's specifically allocated to those jurisdictions to help them specifically, like not just amongst the pool that goes to everyone else, but specifically to help those communities which are being challenged by government policy?
Being challenged by the phase out of coal.
That's government policy.
So great question, member. The long and the short is that, and I've had communities ask me this. So this goes back to the response of communities can apply to CARES for multiple projects. And so I made that very clear, in fact, when I was meeting with the municipality of Hanna to say, we are aware that you're one of the communities most affected by the phase out of coal, which the department is acutely aware of. So,
Minister, I'm going to cut you off there because I think I heard your answer before. What I'm asking, and maybe it's something you can come back with us, is specifically, will you put some allocation of CARES dollars specifically to those affected communities?
Well, I don't want to preemptively make a decision before we've received applications, but what I can tell you, member, is that we've encouraged them to make applications.
Okay. I think that's it. Another question, in speaking with some people in the coal industry, I understand that there is some export opportunities for thermal coal, given that there are at least a few of the mines that have rail access that could allow us to export from those, and that Alberta thermal coal is of some of the highest grade in the world, and is, I understand, under demand in places like Japan, given their transition to different fuel types. Is there any plan to support thermal coal export from Alberta?
So we're looking at and working with companies that are exploring the opportunities. Part of the challenge, so first of all, you're bang on that we have some of the highest quality coal in the world. One of the biggest challenges right now is the price of coal, and so companies are finding it hard to make the economics work of shipping it, especially overseas, all the way to Japan.
Okay, I hope you'll support that if that opportunity comes around.
And can I just clarify real quick?
Yes.
I had said the apprenticeship training came from labor. It's actually coming from advanced education.
Okay, thank you. Minister, I'm just going to move quickly, and I apologize for moving so fast here, but in Key Strategy 1.1 in your business plan, it references barriers to growth in strategic sectors. Could you identify what specific barriers to growth in strategic sectors you've identified, and what initiative you're undertaking to address those identified barriers?
So as my officials find it, I think first and foremost, one of the biggest barriers to growth, frankly, at least within the energy sector, is the international price of oil, which is posing a challenge and one of the barriers to growth. And I'm just looking for others, which, forgive me, member.
Well, maybe we'll be
so. Right. I mean,
I know you're going to say pipeline, so we're going to come to.
No, well, yes, of course, that's one of my favorite words. But manufacturing is a new sector of focus that we are focusing on. Again, incredible opportunities in the manufacturing, and manufacturing really again goes sector wide. That could be manufacturing for oil and gas or others.
Minister, I hope that when you are looking at the manufacturing, you'll also look at the cost of inputs like electricity and carbon tax and those other things that may affect our competitiveness in those emerging industries. Minister, I'm going to shift gears here quickly, and again, so sorry for the time constraints here. I want to talk a little bit about China. One of the barriers that we've discussed in various committees is that China still is not allowing imports of chilled Alberta beef. What are you specifically doing between your department and the federal government to try and overcome that barrier that we can then move to high value exports, utilizing some of the air cargo capacity we have for high value, high quality, premium chilled beef?
Thank you. Good question. So one of the things is that on these trade missions, part of the reason why we've been going to China twice a year is because we recognize that we need to continue to get in front of Chinese officials who are the decision makers. We're working collaboratively with the federal government, the Canadian federal government, as well as with our embassies. 10 out of our 12 Alberta offices are co-located in embassies, so we are in constant contact with them, looking at trying to drive on the canola side that decisions need to be scientifically based on fact, but as well that we are trying to increase our market share. And one of the things working with the federal government that they did was got the, I believe it is
specifically the chilled beef issue that I'm hoping that you've got some issues.
Yes, so it's a combination of working with my provincial counterpart, Ag Forestry, but also the federal government, both on international trade and also in the federal Ag Department, leveraging organizations like Canada Beef that have presences in China. But frankly, it's about continuing to drive this forward. And what I can tell you is that what's helping our case is that we have an increased middle class that is demanding quality food. And so again, getting in front of Chinese officials to remind them of the quality of the food that we have. We also have a direct Air China cargo flight out of Edmonton, which will help us get our product to China.
Okay. On the tourism front, from China, obviously there's big opportunities there. We now have passenger services direct. I'm going to take a little bit of a different twist on this, and I'll use the term ecotourism, but I'm actually talking about economic tourism. Okay. So we have a reasonably, a larger volume of Chinese tourists coming here. What are you doing with those tourists when they're here to ensure that they're not just here to look at mountains and do some sightseeing, but also to see what opportunities exist here with post-secondary, with business investment, with real estate investment, and with broader investment opportunities?
Right. Great question, member. So a number of things. We work closely with the Department of Culture and Tourism, and you're right about the flights. Tourism, we're trying to look at opportunities to partner with municipalities and regions to go beyond just the Calgary, Banff, and then off to British Columbia. Yes, we know that the Rocky Mountains are a big draw, but we also know that we have incredible opportunity to grow our tourism in other parts of the province. Again, north of Grand Prairie, an incredible museum that opened up not too long ago. We also recognize that every opportunity we have to get people into Alberta, whether it's through post-secondary students, so we work closely with our post-secondaries, looking at opportunities to grow our student exchanges, which at the U of A, there's the Chinese Institute does an incredible job, but we need to do a much better job getting Canadian students to go do stints in China. What that does is build a relationship. Honestly, it has lifelong impact. So looking at business opportunities, business to business, even business to business.
I got one other question related to that, if you don't mind. Apologies for the interruption.
It's okay.
I know that here in Edmonton, you have a larger number of Chinese Mandarin bilingual programs. And Calgary is struggling with that same issue. These are the students that will, in the next generation, become the traders possibly of the future through their language skills and cultural affinity. What are you doing with the education community to ensure that we have that early pipeline of people that will have that affinity and language skills?
Yeah, great question. So that is a topic of conversation that I've had numerous times with the Minister of Education, looking at working with the school boards. Again, the school boards do determine the need of which languages, immersion schools, bilingual schools that they want to set up. This is something that we encourage the different boards to look at pursuing, and then of course opportunities for a government to partner with that. But I agree with you.
I would encourage
100%.
you to encourage them, I guess would be my statement on that. Thank you, Minister.
Fair enough.
It is now time for the third party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the Minister again. I'll apologize in advance for probably trying to do some speed dating here.
It's okay.
Just wanted to ask a few questions. We've had some conversation around China, India, South Korea, possibly some other larger markets like Indonesia. I'm going to be a little bit blunt with you here, but from my experience and looking at some trade statistics, Australia is eating our lunch in many of these markets. You mentioned that Australia gobbled up our market share very quickly when there was a beef issue in South Korea. What have you and your department done to analyze our key competitors, and I would say in many of the agricultural products specifically, that's probably the US and Australia, to see what they're doing, and what are we doing to combat what I would say is the fact that we're not actually hitting our full market potential there, nor are we getting anywhere near our capacity share and what our potential is in those markets in some of the key products. What are you doing to ensure that we can leverage those and increase our export market potential?
Sure. So one of the things that we're doing, as I mentioned, is we're refocusing our international offices where we don't need to be everything to everyone. We need to pick based on market data as far as what is the demand, where can Alberta be a supplier of either product or processes. I can tell you that part of the reason Australia, well, and Korea, why they gobbled our lunch, but there's a proximity from Australia to Asian markets where until we had the Air China cargo flight, we didn't have direct routes to get some of our products over to China. So we are looking at working with entities like Port Metro Vancouver when we go to the west and then ship it by sea over. We're also working closely with the federal government. We're working much more closely with industry. Part of the other challenge is that industry was going on their own, trying to get market share, trying to look at breaking into these markets, which posed a challenge. The other thing we're doing is really trying to expand our trade agreements. We know that these provide frameworks and opportunities to help reduce trade barriers, which reduces the cost and increases opportunity for market expansion.
Thank you, Minister. One of the things I checked as well was just looking at some of the web portals of some of the Australian export, and their web portals are far superior to what I see, not just from Alberta, but from Canada. Now, granted, those are national websites in many cases, but I would also suggest, and I know that's one of your objectives is to have better business portals. I would assume that includes the export portals.
100%.
I don't think we're up to snuff in just doing a very quick cursory review of that. So I would encourage you to do that. Minister, I'm going to shift to some of our concerns around flight of capital. We've seen, by some of my estimations, around $32 billion of international capital move out of Alberta, thankfully replaced by investment from the likes of CNRL and Cenovus. But that's not bringing new international capital into the marketplace, which we definitely sorely need in this marketplace to develop the third largest hydrocarbon deposits in the world. What are you doing specifically to either mitigate further loss of international capital or to attract new capital back to Alberta?
Great question. So a number of things. When it comes to within our oil and gas sector, we've done things like modernized our royalty system, our royalty program, which now incentivizes companies not only in driving down costs, rewarding innovation, but also ensuring that that they are able to continue to make a profit as the production levels of a well decreases, which they've said to us, this is one of the ways that we're doing it. The other thing is the Alberta Enterprise Corporation, over the past year and a half, we've given them an additional $75 million. First time since AEC was stood up, that is a fund to fund that then invests in Alberta companies. So this is attracting venture capital to be invested within our province. We also have and have seen investment of oil and gas companies from Husky Energy. I mean, they've increased their forecast barrels, but also their investment in capital expenditures. Obviously, we talked about CNRL, Cenovus, Baytex.
Minister, I'm asking specifically. I did some math on it. It was just over $32 billion of capital that has been moved out of this province in oil and gas investment. You know, when you take 80% of Alberta, Canadians' investment is actually pushed out and diversified in other marketplaces. We see through the big pension funds and whatnot. We need global capital here. So I hear what you're saying here about incentivizing the companies that are staying here. The trouble is we're not attracting the new capital. So I'm hoping that we'll hear more about that in the near future.
Okay, if I can just clarify though, in 2016, Alberta had more capital investment than any other province across the country. And so there is capital that is coming in. I do appreciate the fact that the downturn of the price of oil, that's part of the reason we created the capital investment tax credit. This is going to have a significant impact on companies investing. This is open to any company, no matter where they're located in the world, if they come to Alberta and set up shop.
Thank you. I think we need, obviously there's an environment here that international capital is moving away. I'd like to see that come back. A different flight. I'm going to talk about the flight of flights. We're lucky enough to have a fairly reasonable air services, direct air service, which is, of course, a very, very important economic development, both in the tourism and also in other kinds of commerce. What are you doing during this downturn with likely lower flight loads in working with the Minister of Culture and Tourism to ensure we don't lose those flights that are also important to us, both on the passenger and the cargo side? That to me is an economic development issue.
I agree with you 100%. And so we work very closely with Edmonton International Airport and Calgary International Airport. They participated on trade missions when we go overseas. We're looking at working with them and the federal government to open up opportunities for other direct flights. The Minister of Culture Tourism announced the direct flight from Mexico City to Calgary. That is a business flight, which is significant for us. Every other flight to Mexico has been to the coastline, to the resorts, and obviously we are working and using our international offices to help promote the direct Calgary Hainan flight. I can tell you that there is other potential interest with other Chinese jurisdictions, potentially securing direct flights into Alberta. For obvious reasons, I can't get into those details at the moment, but we are looking at providing increasing attention tourism to fill the flights. And again, right now with the price of the dollar where it is, as well as leveraging our Canadian reputation in a lot of countries, which, as you know, in Asia is very strong, to promote Alberta as a destination.
Thank you, Minister. That's a sound strategy. Obviously, if there's empty seats, we don't have the economic activity here, we need to attract it in. I have one last question on high-level strategy with respect to alignment or realignment of the priorities of the international offices. You've spoken a little bit about. Take us up to the 30,000-foot level here. What is your vision in terms of the international offices to refocus their attention and the effectiveness that they're going to bring in terms of actually generating export activity and creating jobs in Alberta?
Sure. So one of the things that we're doing is at the same time realigning our international offices. We've created the Alberta Export Expansion Program. That program helps assess where a company is at to determine which stream they should start in. So we are lending support to Alberta companies that are prepared to go into a market, not just companies that,
kicking tires.
Kicking tires, throwing mud at the wall to see what sticks. The other thing that our offices are doing is lining up high quality meetings with the companies that are going. So again, the companies that are eligible, that are ready to break into a new market, or looking for partnership, they are getting high quality meetings teed up. So our offices on the ground are able to evaluate Chinese investors, Chinese companies, again, weed out the ones that aren't ready or aren't a good match. And so that process has led, and I encourage you to talk to companies that came with us on our trade missions that talked about the high level quality meetings that we're having lined up. The other thing that we're doing is having a strong presence by returning to China. The Agriculture Forestry Minister was in India. That we know that we need to be there on the ground in addition to our offices, that we need minister to minister meetings that will set the stage for trade agreements that will open up doors, whether it's through MOUs or, like I said, through trade agreements. I've been encouraging and working with the federal government. They're in the right now exploratory talks with China at the start of or to explore the possibility of a free trade agreement, which we have been encouraging them to do so. We recognize that a free trade agreement reducing tariffs and barriers for Alberta businesses would be significant in the country and in the region.
Minister, I'm going to just encourage you. I think I've just got last seconds. Your objective 1.5 about the one-stop shop business portals. I'm going to ask you to benchmark us against places like Australia and the U.S. to make sure that those portals are there, which are often a first stop for people considering the export. That can then lead them to your export market expansion programs. So I would hope that would be an opportunity that you would take a close look at.
I appreciate the advice.
All right.